The first sign you won't thrive in 2025, according to my 5-category list to kick off the new year, is that you keep a communication backlog. This is in the category of relationships. In this video, which I'm going to do in one take, I've got relationships, health, self-education, spirituality, and shadow psychology with 5 very toxic, very subtle, some of them completely unconscious signs that you're not going to make it this year. I'm on your side. I want you to get better. I want you to heal deeper, but what I'm going to try and do in this video is nothing less than saving your soul from yourself. I am not immune to some of these things on this list. We're here in the mix together. Let's just go through the list together as you're listening in the background or maybe going for a walk. Just pay attention to the ones that you have. The first sign, anyway, that you're not going to thrive in 2025 from the relationship category is that you keep a communication backlog. Couple minutes on this, couple minutes on every one. Fundamentally, this is when you end up in a situation, a very common situation, whether it's in your friendships, your family relationships, or especially your romantic relationships, where you don't communicate important information close to the time when you get irritated by the information. Typically, this will look like an argument that happens at the end of the day between a man and a woman, or between a son and a father, between a daughter and a mother, between 2 friends. Something happens in the middle of the day. It's choked down. For example, let's imagine that I'm in a conversation with one of my close friends and they forget to do the thing that I requested of them. They forget to send me a message about a certain work agreement that we had. First thing, I don't mention it. Kind of gets stored in my communication backlog. Later that day, I notice that when we're on a call, they don't really ask me how I'm doing. Goes into the communication backlog. Even later that same day, even though I've been really keeping it inside, a third thing happens, and guess what? They disrespect me by saying something that's insensitive over text message. Rather than being calm and responding to the text message, and it's them being slightly off, they didn't know that I was having a stressful work week, and they said something that would be way too demanding of me, or maybe a joke that was a bit cruel. I respond not only to the text message, but to the moment from the call, and the moment from earlier in the day as well. Classic pattern. I'm giving you one example for a single day, but the communication backlog issue is the number one point, the number one sign that you won't thrive in 2025, because it is so unbelievably common. In friendships, sure. In family relationships, even more so. Not just from the day, but from the week and from the month. In romantic relationships, it is the most common argument pattern of all. Yeah, well, remember what you did last year. Remember how you did so-and-so last month. Remember 17 years ago when you didn't take out the trash. Where's that coming from? Communication backlog. If you have this habit, I want you to heal this habit by trying to say the thing that irritates you or causes resentment as soon as you identify it, if possible, or at least within a 24-hour window. You can be grounded, you can be calm. Fix this first. I'm emphasizing this point before you go deeper into the video. If you take nothing from this video, but removing the communication backlog and being present and up to date in your social relationships, you will feel a sense of lightness that is going to carry you through the year with joy and peace and serenity. Okay? Second sign that you won't thrive in 2025, moving now towards romantic relationships in particular, is that you refer to your partner as your better half. It seems cute. It seems romantic. Oh, my better half. She's on the way. Oh, my better half. He'll be here any moment. How's your better half? Oh, my better half. Sounds deeply romantic. It's true. From a basic psychological standpoint, it's a nice thing to say. From an unconscious shadow psychology perspective, you are engaged in a pedestalization dynamic which, by virtue of duality, means that you go into an inferior position. If they're your better half, you must be the worse half. Why is your relationship split into betters and inferiors? Remove this language structure and remove the unconscious structure beneath it. A way to become more unionized in your partnership is that you both have better and worse halves. There isn't one person who's the good person and one person who's the bad person. You've fragmented yourself right down the middle, But within your relationship, rather than understanding that in your fragmentations, quite frankly, you are the one who's fragmented down the middle, and also at many stages and layers depending on your various mental, spiritual, emotional, and somatic unconscious, which is something we do across on channel. We can't cover it in this particular video, and just for the sake of the second sign you won't thrive in 2025, please do not refer to your partner as your better half. You both have different halves, and you both get to work together. The third sign that you won't thrive in 2025 is that you defer authority about relationship decisions to your parents or your friends. I'll say that one more time. The third sign is that you defer your relationship decision making to your parents and your friends. Initially, this seems like getting counsel, getting advice about a challenging situation. Should you go this way or should you go that way? Hey, best friend, what do you think about what she said? Hey, mom, what do you think about how he acted here? Fine, completely normal. I want you to have a social network which is supportive, but one of the unconscious patterns that really erodes mental well-being and the feeling of mature relational control and mature relational union, you being in control of your relationship, the two of you being in control of your relationship together, is that the parents or the in-laws have way too much decision-making on your adult-to-adult relationship, or your friends and social network also have way too much decision power in regards to your relationship. It's not difficult to change this pattern, but it will take a lot of courage and some social rewiring. Fundamentally, the one thing that I want you to remember is if you are in this pattern of basically giving your authority away to other people to decide what you do in your romantic life, especially maybe in your marriage, especially if children are involved, usually with parents, usually with in-laws, just pay attention to how that makes you feel. Is this really how you want things to continue? If you have a pattern in the past, don't let it repeat for the future. The fourth sign from the relationship category, again, 5 categories in this video, you can check down the timestamps if you want to see, but if you're already watching, I invite you to stay with me for all 5 of these relationship points at the very least. Fourth sign, you're not going to make it this year. You are hooked on the book that you saw in the thumbnail. I can't say the word out loud because we're on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't like this word. But if you're spending time on adult websites and consuming adult distractions and you believe the, frankly, nonsense conditioning that it's completely normal and completely healthy and there's no detriment to your romantic relationship, you are sorely mistaken. I used to believe this lie, and it is a true lie. It's something which initially starts as a healing move. You got to imagine the spiral. Someone who's intimately repressed. I want to use the S word. I'm going to use the word intimate instead. Someone who's intimately repressed heals by going to the opposite side of the spectrum, which might, at the very earliest stages, mean looking at adult material. Someone who's raised in a very puritanical culture and they never had any education around intimacy or relationships, especially the bedroom variety, they get a healing move if they get to see a variety of intimate expressions on the internet. That's true, but the spiral must return. At a certain stage, the spiral turns back, and it goes and it goes and it goes, but at a certain stage in the spiral, you drop the P word. You no longer spend your time in the cornfields. I'll call it that way. There's dualities, there's pendulums, repression, expansion, too much expansion, a bit less repression, a bit less expansion. Gradually you find the middle point. If you're an adult man or an adult woman, and you're spending time in front of the screen watching strangers get it on, and you're worrying or wondering or maybe even oblivious to the fact that your bedroom is not the way that it should be, it's time to make the change. I'm not judging you. I spent years struggling with these issues, but thankfully, after being many years clean of these issues as well, things I've discussed on this channel before, things like retention practices, I'm not going to go into it in detail in this video. But please pay attention to the fact that if you're consuming this kind of material, it is going to have deep, conscious and unconscious effects on your romantic relationship. It is not the case that what you do behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. You know that it's not good for you, and I want you to feel better in your own intimate expression. But if someone's at this stage where they're being puritanically repressed, and they're over here now, they're making the move, they're going to see me as being a repressive figure and see me as being judgmental. I can't avoid that, unfortunately. Hopefully you can see and feel the energy here that I'm not judging someone for their expression. I've worked with people. I've enjoyed friendships. I've loved people, friends, all kinds of situations, clients who have many, many, many different preferences in terms of their intimacy and what they do in their bedroom behind closed doors. I'm all for expression. But this, in particular, is two-dimensional, strangers doing things in front of your face, and it is not real, somatic, energetic reality. So just watch out for it. Let's move on to the final point. In this, I think, going to be 5 videos in one, essentially. The final sign that you're not going to thrive in 2025. You are blind to the inner children within. Going to sip on the coconut water, say that one more time. The 5th sign you're not going to make it in your relationships. You're blind to the inner children within yourself and within your partner. Ultimately, this means that you need to take the time to turn off the fire that kicked off in the background. Maybe you can hear that. Isn't that interesting? The fire goes off when the temperature gets low, and I forgot to turn it off fully. Real-time moment. You know that I'm filming this in one take. I'll just take a second, turn off the fire, enjoy seeing the library. Definitely don't need any more heat in here. It's going to get hot enough with the 20 extra points I'm going to be bringing up. Back to the 5th point. You're blind to your inner children. If you're dating somebody who's got childhood trauma wounds, and if you've got childhood trauma wounds, understand that your inner children live within you. Age 3, age 6, age 9, age 12, age 15, age 18, and every age in between. It's not just one child, it's your inner children. In the best relationship dynamic, you're going to be able to create and cultivate a conscious union where your little boy and her little girl and your little girl, little boys, whatever the setup might be, they all get to hold hands together. Your adult hand, their adult hand, and all of those smaller hands encoded and enfolded within like Russian dolls, holding each other together. And that's what I want your relationship to feel like. If you're blind to the fact that sometimes you'll be speaking to their little girl, or sometimes you'll be punishing their little boy and not realizing it because you're talking to the adult and you're talking to the adult, just build a bit more awareness. You shouldn't lose the fact that you're primarily adult to adult. 80% of your relationship should be, in my case, for example, adult man to adult woman. But occasionally, I might be in little boy consciousness. They might be in little girl consciousness. Adult woman to little boy to adult woman, little boy to little girl to adult man. These are the dynamics at the deeper levels of the psyche. You can make it all kinds of interesting dynamics, and you can do all kinds of things in terms of your inner adolescent there, little girl, little boys, and 3-year-olds and 9-year-olds, and all the various interplays in terms of communication and healing and compassion and understanding and expression. It would need an entire video breakdown. For the sake of this one final point in the relationship category, just be aware that you've got a little person within you, several of them, in fact, and they likewise have the same. You'll appreciate just how much safer the relationship feels when you take this seriously. We'll move on now to the next category. The second category for the video of signs you won't thrive in 2025. 6th point. You're breathing in the incense. You're burning incense. A little bit of a light one to break things up, but a real unconscious pattern that I see in many, many intentional communities and intentional people. What are you doing to your lungs? Even the highest quality incense is usually polluting. It usually blocks up your respiration, and a better alternative would be water and high quality organic essential oils. I've got a station just down here with around 15 to 20 different essential oils, from pine to bergamot to cinnamon to orange to lavender to eucalyptus, myrrh, frankincense. Not quite gold, I'm not quite one of the wise men, but I feel spiritually infused when I get the right infusion in my oil diffuser, and I don't need incense polluting my lungs. This is something I changed years ago, and if you're someone who's asthmatic or you suffer with allergies or you have to take antihistamines, just pay attention to what you're burning and go for the oil instead. Go for the water, and the oil and the vapor will make a difference. And if you're not interested in either of these things, you might think, oh, I want to move on, skip forwards. Consider what would happen if you introduce some aromatherapy into your life. It's a wonderful, wonderful practice. The 7th sign that you won't thrive in 2025 is that you do not go outside unless the sun has his hat on and is smiling down at you from the heavens. You refuse to go outside if it's slightly windy, slightly rainy, a little bit grey. You only go out when it's sunny. I'm not going to spend too long on this. If you're only going outside when the weather is good, especially if you're like me and you live in the UK or in winter time in Europe or in America and you haven't got sunshine energy 24/7, just pay attention to the fact that you're significantly limiting your ability to get grounded, to enjoy nature, and to experience the many positive effects of being outdoors throughout the year. We weren't created, we weren't designed, we didn't evolve, depending on your belief system, for indoor screen-based living. Our bodies need air and movement and exposure to the environment around us. If you're in a city, it may not be that beautiful, but at the very least, I encourage you to find a park nearby. For me personally, I love going for nature walks almost every single day, often for at least 40 minutes at a time, many times more than an hour and a half or 2 hours, with the weight vest on, as you've probably seen on my live streams. And you notice in those live streams, I don't only go out when it's sunny. Just a really simple thing to pay attention to. I may call out some people right here now, and people could be in the comment section saying, I've been called out there, especially in the winter. Just pay attention. The 8th sign that you won't thrive, again, from section number 2. This is the health section. We had you burn incense. We had that you don't go outside unless it's sunny. And the 3rd sign, connected with the walking theme, is that you wear normal shoes. If you haven't gotten on to the barefoot hype, I'm not going to recommend any particular brand in this video. I'm not affiliated with any particular brand. But if you haven't allowed your feet the ability to go from this, imagine this is my foot, to go from this to gradually opening up, you have not experienced your true ground. I will say it with emphasis. Until you've healed your feet and allowed that proper rooting pattern, you don't know what it feels like just yet. Unfortunately, we have been robbed of this experience through well-meaning parents who put us in all the proper shoes, all the proper shoe stores. Our little feet were measured by well-meaning men and women or teenagers on their summer break at the shoe store. And we had these cages around our feet, and many women especially suffer from bunions and kind of all kinds of weird things where their feet get misshapen because they're wearing really pointy tight shoes. If you want to ground yourself, literally, energetically, you want to heal yourself, and grounding is part of that process, make sure you spend as much time as you possibly can barefoot. Fun fact behind the scenes, I've been wearing socks throughout the day because it is winter in the UK, but before filming this video, I enjoy having my nice bare feet splayed out on the rug beneath me, so I can truly not only feel my body ready to talk, ready to be rooted, but subtly, energetically, I'm a bit more in contact with the books and the teachers around me. Maybe it's a hippie thing to say. I am a little bit alternative, what can I say? Just consider going barefoot. It will really help, really help. You can get really cheap shoes, and once you go down that pathway, I think your feet will thank you, and it's going to be very, very difficult to go back. I guarantee it. Let's move on now to the 9th sign that you won't thrive in 2025. You don't know when to nap. Excuse me. Real-time video. We don't do editing here. I'm a human. I've been speaking all day. It's currently 1 a.m., 1:30 in the morning. I had a live stream, had a group call, had a client call, and here I am doing the video right at the end of the day, so my senses are definitely feeling the stress. Maybe I should take my own advice. I didn't know when to nap today. I didn't quite have the time, but isn't that just the perfect excuse? Oh, I don't have the time. I'm so busy. I can't possibly take half an hour to rest my eyes. I'll just keep working. 10 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours. Most days I will take a nap for at least half an hour. And I get to do that because I have control of my schedule. But if you're someone who's working a regular job and you want to do something in the evening, trying to find a way to get that nap is not just an energetic recharge, it's actually a reconditioning of a lot of the unconscious stories around work ethic, productivity, and also your value as a human being. Many of the little boys and little girls within us were told at one point or another that it's lazy, or it's being selfish to take a nap. A moment when you were younger, you were falling asleep, and mother or father, brother or sister, auntie or uncle, granny or grandpa came in and called you lazy and told you to get up and do something useful. Those stories run deep, and if you don't yet know how to take a nap, I guarantee that you'll make the most of this year if you find a way to ride the wave up, ride the wave down, maximize with a nap all the way into deep restoration, and guess what? You're going to come out on the opposite end with more charge inside of you. Let's move on to the final point from this category, and the 10th sign that you won't thrive in 2025. You eat things you didn't choose. This is opportunistic eating, and it's especially prevalent inside of the work environment and the shared home or family environment or a romantic situation. It could be a marriage, it could be a stay-in partner, where you're not quite aligned in terms of dietary choices. The classic example of this being a big issue is if you go into the workplace, you go into the office and you're trying to look after your body, you're trying not to eat processed foods, and guess what happens in the office? There's loads and loads of processed foods. If you just opportunistically eat whatever is put in front of you, you don't have a proper boundary about consumption. It's not a big deal if it's every now and again. It's somebody's birthday, fine, have a piece of cake. I understand. Most of the people who I talk to, maybe yourself, pretty much everyone in this community, we're trying to get on top of our health and eat more organic foods and be more mindful about things like junk food and processed sugar and all kinds of toxic substances in the food that's prepackaged and wrapped in plastic. We don't eat that stuff, generally speaking. We can enjoy it as a treat, sure, but it's not a principle. You know this. I'm not preaching at you. It's just what we're doing. You already know this. Where it gets difficult is if you start opportunistic eating in not only the work environment when it's obvious it's junk food, but also at home if you're living with someone who doesn't quite take diet and lifestyle as seriously or as sensitively as you. Just watch out for it. Just because it's on the side, or just because it's in the cupboard, doesn't mean it's something you should put into your body. It's a small, subtle thing, but many people will struggle with this on a weekly, if not daily basis. So I thought I'd put this in here to wrap up this category. Let's move on to the self-education mark. I can see that we're over 20 minutes deep. I'm going to take some more coconut water, and I'm going to read the first one to begin the self-education stack, the signs that you won't thrive in your self-educational endeavors. The first sign that you won't thrive in 2025 when it comes to your self-education is that you don't highlight books. It's not complex. If you don't highlight books, you're making a big mistake. Why is this so important? 2 reasons. First reason, studies show it increases information retention. Blah, 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 blah. I don't care about that. Point number 2, more interesting point for me to focus on. If you take a book, like this book that I recommended earlier, and you have the ability, I'll find a highlight just here. I saw a purple one come up just a moment ago. There we go. I can't read this out because of the first words, but you'll see my highlight just there. You can pause this if you want to. I'm not doing it in a neat way. That was very much a scribble. Sometimes I highlight like this, other times I highlight in horizontal lines. What's happening when I'm highlighting? I'm forming a literal, felt relationship with the material that I'm consuming, and at the higher level, I am paying more attention to the person I'm having a conversation with. In this case, I'm having a conversation with Matt Fradd. He wrote this book, he's the author. We're having a conversation as we're talking, and for me, the highlight is almost the equivalent of going, oh yeah, that's a great point. I'd never thought about that. Matt, thank you. I'd never thought about that. Once you understand that books are conversations, look at me, all passionate, even though it's almost 2 a.m. in the morning, suddenly the book conversation brings me back to life. Highlighting is a gift that keeps on giving, truly. You're forming a somatic relationship with the book, but you're also deepening your conversation with the author who wrote the book. The highlight is to pay attention. It's a little bit extra effort, but the effort is energetically the same as a head nod or an acknowledgement. You're paying a bit more attention. Just pay attention to it. And please, if you haven't already, get yourself a pastel set of highlighters. It will massively improve your education this year. Let's move on to the 12th point, the 12th sign that you won't thrive in 2025. It's that you don't put your phone away. Said another way, you read with your phone nearby. This is obvious. I was talking about it today in a group call inside the Shadowwork Library with several of our community members. There were 18 of us on this group call. You can find more information in the description. Intense, intelligent, creative, curious individuals. And all of us, despite being, I will say it on their behalf, certainly above average in terms of their consciousness, we all struggle with the same exact thing. When this device is nearby, it is an unbelievably alluring temptation to just check something. You not only lose the focus in that moment, you also lose the minutes after that when you've changed lane to a different task, and it takes time to come back in. 15-minute check, move over here. I'll just quickly see what my friend sent me. Haha, that's a funny meme. That's how we all react. Ha ha ha. I find this hilarious. Oh my god. We don't find it that hilarious quite often, but that's what we're typing. Blah, 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 blah. Things happen. You're going to go back to reading. If you're reading a simpler book, might not be so much of a time delay, but if you're reading a book like this one, I'm going to see if it's a high-level book. Let's do a bit of fun to keep it entertaining. It's a random book from the shelf on my side. I don't know which one this is. Synchronicity will guide us. If you're reading a book like this one, fantastic choice. The old school original Psychosynthesis by Roberto Assagioli. Mwah, fantastic book. High-level transpersonal psychology from the 1940s, I believe. In fact, I think the first publishing of this book, 1965 in English, but from the Italian, it was much, much earlier. If you're reading a book like Psychosynthesis, and you're trying to understand the nature of the general assessment and exploration of the unconscious, or you're moving into a chapter where your book is literally falling apart because you've been rereading it and making too many notes and getting towards these notes, I've just got too much going on. The book's falling apart. Let it fall apart. Let it fall into your hands. Engage in the process. Don't put the book down. Just don't put the book away. Playing with the energy. I'm waking myself up by bringing a bit more somatic energy in, because even now, energetically, I'm making a meta moment because it's my YouTube channel. I'm going to do what I want. As I stand here, still energetically in my feet, but projecting my consciousness right to you through this camera. Looking over at the screen. Camera. Occasionally looking at the massive studio light. I can feel myself getting more and more disconnected because I'm saying more and more words. But a book in my hand. This feeling. So much better than this feeling. Don't allow this option. It's a sign you won't thrive. Just keep your phone in one room and read for the hour and a half, 2 hours in the other room. It will really add up over time. And eventually you might even choose to have no phone days, which are something which I massively recommend. I personally don't use Instagram for 4 days of the week. I don't use YouTube for 3 days of the week. And it's pretty healing for your focus. Let's move on to the next point. Enough ranting about the phone and enough appreciation of Psychosynthesis, but I do recommend you read that book. The 13th sign, halfway point, that you won't thrive in 2025. I'm doing it right now. I'm going to demonstrate it for you. I'm feeling theatrical. Why not? Let's make it more fun. This is the 13th sign that you won't thrive. I'm doing the opposite of this. You get what I'm doing? Standing up. The 13th sign that you won't thrive in 2025 is you do all of your reading while sitting down. Have you ever tried the experience of moving around with a book? For me, quite often, as you can see, I'm moving around and dancing. At the very least, I'll just be feeling the internal rhythm. Sometimes you get very focused on something and you stop and highlight. But then you'll flow. You'll go backwards and forwards. You'll go over here. Sometimes I'll do this and I'll kind of put the book down here and move around with the book. If you're moving through a new idea, why not move your body? Even then, a bit of a tiptoe and a bit of a come down. Sometimes ideas are so fascinating in the same way that if you're really enjoying a conversation with your best friend out on a walk in nature, you're naturally going to have moments where you move quicker as the conversation goes quicker, or you slow down when there's a heavy moment, something dark, something difficult. All of this matters. Your body and your mind are truly combined. Don't do all of your reading sitting down. At this stage in my reading, and I suppose over the last 5 years, overall, as a summary, as someone who's read between 4 to 6 hours per day, every single day, on average, some days much longer, other days I don't get an opportunity to read very much at all, but on average 4 to 6 hours per day, I'd say around 50% of my reading is done standing up, potentially 60% on a day where I'm in the sunshine in the porch, or I haven't yet been to the gym and I'm doing my bulk reading in the morning. I will be standing, I'll be leaning, maybe I'll lean slightly on a counter on porch, I can lean my lower back, but I'll still be on my feet. People wonder how I can read so much. It's because I allow my body to come out of this crippled state. Not that people read like this. I don't know many people that read like this. They're not quite crippled. They're not like this. But most of us are looking down. I can't speak because microphone's up here, but I'm sitting down, crumpled in. Energetically, if you're trying to open your mind to a new possibility, if you're trying to work on a trauma from the past, receiving the idea in an upright position, sometimes being as dramatic to read a book like this. This This is a page from Questions to Young Adults. To read this, standing up, and pause and reflect. Whom do you consider an ideal model? I'm overemphasizing this point. I know I've let this point go on for way too long compared to a video where there's 25 points, but I want you to remember this. In the same way I started the video, with communication backlog being an issue, stop letting things build up over time. This is one of the key emphases of the entire video. Do more of your standing. Do reading standing. I want this to burn in your mind. Jordan standing up and going, because maybe you'll try it. Maybe you'll try it. I know distraction will happen. You'll forget that you watched this video, but I just want you to experience how much more depth and physical enjoyment you can get out of your physical books if you bring in more physicality. Let it be a full body conversation. But you also need to watch out for the next sign that you're not going to thrive in terms of your self-education, especially not in 2025. And that's that you're precious but not professional with your reading. You'll notice that when I pulled up this book, the book is falling apart. That's one aspect of being precious. The book's falling apart. It's an old book. It's an old first edition book. It's basically falling apart. I'm not going to get too dramatic and let it fall to pieces. Doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Don't be precious about the book itself. You're here to heal. I was going to swear. You're here to heal. You're here to learn. This is a tool. This is a conversation. This is a moment in time. It doesn't matter what happens to the book. What happens and what matters is everything inside of you. Don't be precious about the physical book. Don't be afraid to mark the book, to rip the book, to chew it and talk with it and engage with it. It'll make a big difference. Second sign, within this single sign that you're being precious, not professional, is that you just don't take it seriously. To be precious about any one particular book, rather than being professional, is that you're kind of skimming the surface, whereas the professional would go deep into the material. To be precious about your reading and self-healing is to only read when you feel like it. A professional reads every day, for an hour a day, no matter what. He makes time for it. She dedicates an evening for it. That's the professional way of studying. You don't have to become a therapist, a teacher, a coach, or a healer, or any kind of formative, professional, therapeutic person. But I want you to professionalize your own personal healing, because no one's going to do it for you. I'm not going to do it for you. Your friends aren't going to do it for you. Roberto Assagioli, as wonderful as he is no longer with us, and his book is not going to do it for you. You need to understand that your relationship with your own self-educational journey must be professionalized, because if it becomes professionalized, you're likely to condense the amount of years you have to spend watching YouTube videos like this. Eventually, by God's grace, through your hard effort, through your willpower, and through your dedication, you will never need to watch another video like this ever again. You can really get a lot out of this if you take it seriously. That's going to look different for everyone who's watching the video. Most people will probably benefit on a practical level by letting their books become beaten up and spending more time beating up those books on an hour-by-hour basis every week, no matter what. You can do a hell of a lot with an hour a day for 3 to 5 years in a row. Let's move on to the next point, the final point of the self-educational stack. The 15th sign that you won't thrive in 2025, you read only one book at a time. I won't linger on this. Imagine reading these two books at once. This one theme. This one, many other themes. This one, much more accessible, more modern. I think it was written in 2017. This one, we're going way back in time. We're looking at some psychological complexity related to the higher unconscious, lower unconscious, and middle unconscious, and Assagioli's famous psychosynthesis egg diagram. I love that he's here in this book. Hopefully I can find the diagram for you. If I can't, then you'll have to remember what an egg looks like. Imagine an egg. Here's one for you. Thankfully I found it. That is a very different reading experience to learn about what's on this page compared to what's going on inside of this book. Read multiple books at once. Depending on your mood, depending on the energy of the day, you might not want to read one way or another. For most of the clients I work with in private mentorships, at the very least, I will build out 2 lanes of expression. If we're doing therapeutic work, there'll be a somatically oriented stack with books like Voice of the Body, Betrayal of the Body, Alexander Lowen, or some Peter Levine work at the very basic foundation. And on the other side, we'll have a more psychologically leaning stack. Maybe we'll have a book like Psychosynthesis, or we'll have Jung's Map of the Soul, or Meeting the Shadow. If you're interested in these books, link in the description. I'm going to give you 6 more books. Just go click it. 6 more books just like this. I'm going to give you a curated double stream of educational insight. Down in the description, selfintegrationschool.com. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. It's everything you need for the next 2 months. Well, maybe not, depending on how quickly you read and how professionally you take your own self-integration work. At the very least, read more than one book at once. Don't think that you're not going to remember the books. Just allow the conversations to take you and allow different moods to affect your reading on different days. It's a wonderful, wonderful series of associations, and we're going to move through all of these stacks right at the end as a wonderful conclusion. But let's move on to the 4th part of the video and take another sip of my coconut water again. This is all one take. Quite a different thing that I'm doing over here on YouTube. I'm trying to give you real energy in real time as if it were a one-to-one conversation, as if we were reading a book and I was maybe the book you're reading. Let's make it as conversational as possible. Comment section is probably pretty active. But I'm going to take a little hydration break before moving into the spiritual signs that you won't thrive in 2025. 16th sign nonetheless, you are all prayer and no action. You've forgotten how to act. You believe that God will do it for you. If you don't believe in God, the universe will do it for you. If you don't believe in the universe, maybe your willpower, your soul, your spiritual essence. There's a fine line between praying with intention and expecting the best or being grateful to whatever is given to you and becoming a passive, apathetic, stagnant being who isn't taking the God-given gift, from my perspective, in my language, of having willpower and agency. There's a classic, wonderful phrase that I find, chef's kiss. Pray and move your feet. I love it. So simple. I don't know where it came from, but to pray and move your feet is to call in support or call in the gratitude from some higher power, whatever that might mean for you, and still put in the sweat and the blood and the tears. Both come together. I won't expand more on this. If you don't get this down and you go one way or the other way, too much into action without the prayer, too much into prayer without the action, you're going to stumble. You're really going to find it much harder this year. You also need to watch out for the 17th sign, that you're not going to thrive in 2025, and this is that you don't acknowledge death. In terms of mortality, there's deep implications of not acknowledging death. In terms of practicality, there's a moment that most of us go through, more or less every single day, unless you're a vegan. You don't potentially acknowledge just how much life is lost to be able to sustain and continue your life. I'm not going to turn this into a vegan propaganda moment. I personally eat fish and eggs. I try and get the highest quality I can. But I went through a stage where I was vegan for about 6 months because I had the ethical awakening while working on farms in Europe, the highest caliber of farms, and still seeing the abuse and the exploitation behind the scenes. These are really good farms, my personal experience. I don't like the separation of mother and baby. I didn't like the noises. I didn't like the smells. I didn't like what I saw. And I didn't realize in the first year I was doing this, all of this farming work, it took more healing work on the second year for me to go back into literally the same farms and see everything that was there before. And I didn't see it the first time around. I didn't see the exploitation. And from that moment, I gave up meat and I gave up dairy. And I haven't been back. This was, I suppose, 6 years ago now. I haven't wanted to. It just changed inside of me. But eventually, as my diet started to become problematic, many men find this, especially in terms of vegan diets, especially if you're someone like me who's into lifting. I'm big on my fitness. I'm big on currently a lot of calisthenics, weighted calisthenics. My favorite moves are muscle up. I love weighted dips. I love weighted pull-ups. Trying to get the 20 kg weighted muscle up currently is just a fun move. I mean, the iconic plate between your legs and then getting up on the fantastic. We're currently at 15 kg, so we're not quite there, but we'll get there. We'll get there. I couldn't really build that based off a standard vegan diet while traveling, and I really struggled to do it, even when I was just eating fish. I then brought eggs back into my diet. Eventually, the point that I'm trying to make in this roundabout way is I still acknowledge the life that I'm consuming. It's a spiritual, subtle sign that you won't thrive. Just open your awareness. I'm not judging you for your consumption choices. If you want to eat meat, that is your choice. But why not take a moment when you look at those sausages, or when you're about to consume that bacon sandwich, and realize that that's life? If you take your spirituality seriously, even if you believe it's God's gift that man has dominion over the creatures which walk the earth and their life becomes us, why not say a prayer of gratitude? Why not be a little bit more graceful about the fact that something has ended so that you may continue? It really does matter. If you're interested in the higher bands of consciousness, your consumption habits and your awareness and presence within your consumption habits, it really matters. Just say a little prayer. I like to do it in a very simple way. I acknowledge the fish. I acknowledge the chickens. I'm not even eating the chickens. I'm eating the eggs. And so it's just an egg. Don't worry about it. But I acknowledge the fact that even these high-quality organic chickens are fundamentally living enslaved lives. And I say a little bit of a thank you. Thank you, chickens. I appreciate your hard work. I welcome your eggs into my body so that they may become me, and through my energy they may become something more. I freewheel it. I welcome you into my body so that today I may be more grateful for the challenges I'm facing. I welcome you into my body so you may nourish my muscles after that difficult muscle-up session. Whatever it might be, just be grateful. It really, really matters if you want to go further into the journey. Let's move on to the next point. And again, I hope that doesn't come across as preachy in terms of a particular diet. I really do encourage you to follow the diet that you need based on your particular needs, but just bring awareness to that. I'm going to be more intense and even more triggering on this next point, but I believe it to be true, and I've seen it to be true in my client work over the last 4 years. The 18th sign, the most controversial sign in the entire list that you're not going to thrive in 2025. You're an atheist. You don't believe in something higher. I'm not talking about agnosticism. That's a different category. But if you're a pure atheist, at the logical extension of that belief system, you don't believe in God. Maybe you don't believe in the Christian God. You don't believe in the Islamic God. You don't believe in the Jewish God. You don't believe in Eastern gods. Okay, I get that. I get that. But are you a true atheist who doesn't believe in their own divinity? You don't have a sense of your own soul, your own spirit, that immutable essence, that light, that fire within you, however the language might land. Do you have a sense of that? I didn't for many, many, many years. I grew up in an atheistic family. God was a joke. My father was raised in a punishing Catholic home, and he rebelled when he was a teenager, and I very much inherited his unconscious baggage around Christianity and all of God as a result. It wasn't until I started meditating when I was 18 that I even came across the idea that I'd be anything more than just flesh and bone and corruption and pollution and some accidental chance of evolution. But I went deeper into my meditation. Eventually, I started to see parts of myself that I couldn't see before, and at the higher bands in the spiritual band of self-awareness, I started to recognize my soul, and I built that relationship over time. I continued to build that relationship over time. There's a smile on my face as I say this because it feels like a living part of me that is me, is greater than me, is separate than me, and is ultimately my true self. But arguably, the soul then becomes inferior compared to the spirit, which the soul is encased within spirit, soul, human ego. It all works out halonically. We're not going to go into the transpersonal psychology in too much detail, but it is a sign that you're not going to thrive if you are stuck in the atheistic trap. I don't need you to believe in any particular organized religion. I understand that there's trauma and wounding and people who take that knowledge and that wisdom and those traditions and turn it into something sour or toxic or polluted. I don't want that. I don't support that. But I want you to be agnostic enough to recognize that you are more than just an accident of evolution. Something more, whatever that philosophy might be, that something more will really help you to get over things like body image issues, self-esteem issues, any kinds of self-harm and self-abuse with substances or vices. When you feel that divinity, you will really, really be given quite a gift. So just watch out for it. It genuinely is the most controversial point in this entire list, but arguably it's one of the most important ones. I don't know what kind of feedback I'm going to get on this. My client work tells me it's true. At a certain point, when something's bad's happened to you, when your father did something, your mother didn't do something, and that difficult moment in your childhood, people turn towards God, or at the very least, they turn towards their soul. It matters. It matters more than we dare admit. And I see it work a lot behind the scenes. Good luck in finding that for yourself if you haven't got it just yet. If you do have it already, nurture that spark like it's the most precious thing that you'll ever find. Because it is. The 19th sign that you won't thrive in 2025. You're obsessed with signs and synchronicities. Quite a gear shift there. It's the complete opposite direction. But if you're obsessed with synchronicities, ironically, the sign that you won't thrive is that you're obsessed with signs. You're always looking for angel numbers. You're hyper-spiritual. Put the two together. Shut down spirituality, atheism, all the way over here. Overcharged spirituality, looking for coincidences and finding them everywhere and calling it spiritual. Watch out for the overblown spiritual equivalent. If you are seeing all of the angel numbers on the microwave on your phone and you're seeing every possible coincidence or happening as a sign of your twin flame or romantic love or the fact that so-and-so did so-and-so, yes, there's a degree to which you might be given signs from God or the universe that you're on the right path, but also just watch out for the times when you're deluding yourself. I've been there myself. So just watch out for it. It's said with love, don't read into things more than they need to be read into. Please, it's not worth it. We'll move now into the 20th sign. You're not going to thrive in 2025. My mouth is dry. We're almost 50 minutes into the video. Run out of coconut water. Boo-hoo, woe is me. I'm going to tap into deep spiritual strength. Maybe lean on my bookcase over here. Hopefully it doesn't fall on me as I clutch the knowledge of my forebearers. But the 20th sign that you won't thrive, spiritually speaking, is that you're spiritually illiterate. I'm going to pay extra attention to my tongue now because I've got that dry mouth. You're spiritually illiterate. If you're someone who already has a sense of God and a sense of soul, but you haven't read the great world traditions, at the very least, you haven't read things like the Bible, the Quran, the Eastern texts, the major New Age texts, you have a sense of soul, a sense of spirit, but you're not familiar yet with the literary tradition of these different faiths, you're missing out. I know you've got that inner sense of faith, and that's arguably the most important thing, but if you really want to thrive in 2025, you're going to read these books. Surely you're going to read these books. I found great insights from reading comparative religion, and I may not ascribe to any particular religion at this stage in my life. I don't believe that I can fall into any institution in a literal sense because I've frankly seen too much on a personal level, and I have that little bit of skepticism inside of me. You can still tell in the way that I was speaking about atheism and the soul. I've got a felt sense of what that's like. And I also want to understand the language and the systems and the traditions that led us to this point so I can make sense of what's going on the inside. Just pay attention to it. That's all 5 signs for the spiritual signs at the very least. We're going to move through into the final category, the shadow psychology, wrapping off this video. These are the shadow signs that you're not going to thrive in 2025. The first 3 all come together, sign 21, 22, and 23. 21. You're not looking for your shadow behaviors. 22. You're not looking for your shadow entities. And 23. You've stopped searching the shadow territories. My understanding of shadow work is informed by the last 120 years of psychology, especially Jungian psychology in particular. I've got a shadow work course. I have the shadow work library and classroom and community. Link down in the description. I read for 4 years and spent months studying so I could put together a 9-module curriculum based on 36 books related to shadow psychology and create what I believe to be one of the best shadow work curriculums on the internet, if not the best. No one has challenged me on that term just yet, so I'm going to go with it. For the sake of marketing, self-promotion, I believe I've made the most holistic, most accessible at the price point, most practical, most historically verified shadow work curriculum on the internet at this time of recording in 2025. The link is down in the description. You be the judge. You let me know. Maybe I'm grandiose and inflated. Maybe that's a shadow I need to consider. Also, I see nothing to the contrary. And yet, the shadow concept goes deep, so I try and break it down. As a broken down link in the description, self-promotion, please do join me if you want to go deeper. The shadow territories, shadow entities, and shadow behaviors is the simple pathway into shadow work. Your shadow behaviors, as I've been sharing over in the community post, if you're watching this when I've released it, are your crappy, polluted, self-destructive, unconscious behaviors which are tripping you up over and over again, every single day, every single week. These are your addictions, your vices, your moral shortcomings. For me, it's been a lot of screen addiction for many people. It's been relationships to substances. It's been how they talk to their friends and their family, or how they don't talk to them. Your shadow behaviors But where does the shadow behavior come from? Moving into the next sign, the shadow entity. While the shadow behavior must belong to something or someone or some part which is expressing the behavior. Right now, I have the light behavior, or just the normal consciousness behavior of talking to camera, talking to you, and my entity is me as Jordan. I am the part, I am the person. The shadow entity is the same concept. The behavior is the expression, the articulation, the action, or even the thought. The entity is that which expresses, enacts, or thinks, the origination of that behavior. If you're trying to track your shadows in a practical way, I recommend that you read the books I've been linking down in the description, 6 of them down in the description. I'm enjoying the self-promotion because I'm right in the middle of launch. We're having fantastic calls right now. I just had one of the group calls today. There were 18 of us on the group call, backwards and forwards, 90 minutes. We were talking about dissociation. We were talking about how to overcome addictions and vices. We were talking about the dualities between hard boundaries and soft boundaries, and bringing in at least half a dozen different therapeutic modalities. It's so, look at my energy. It's back. It's like almost 2 a.m. in the morning. Energy comes back. I really love my students. It's fantastic to be in there. I'd love you to be a part of it. Down in the description, come join me. There's a discount code in there as well. The shadow entities express the shadow behaviors. I talk about this more inside the course, but the shadow entities live inside of shadow territories. Shadow territories could be something as simple as all of childhood. Let's give you a practical example. You have a screen addiction issue. You stay up late at night, scrolling on your device. You're like this, really tired, still scrolling. Let's imagine, for the sake of simplicity, that shadow behavior is expressed by the shadow entity of your 7-year-old inner child. Where does that entity live? In the territory of childhood. Another example. Let's imagine that you have the shadow behavior of ignoring your taxes. You don't file your taxes on time. You don't properly manage your taxes. It's something we all have to do as adults. You don't do it. What's the shadow entity behind there? Could be your inner child. Could be a rebellious teenage part. It could be a wounded adult who got burnt in a bad business deal. I don't know. Let's imagine that it's an adolescent. The inner adolescent who didn't want to manage money concerns and maybe had some problems around when they first started needing to make money. There was some kind of wound and you didn't want to pay the tax. It goes all the way back to there. That lives in inner adolescence. So it could be the territory of adolescence. Alternatively, it could be within the territory of a theme, the business theme, business being a territory, entrepreneurship being a territory. So it's not just an age in life, in this case adolescence, and one particular adolescent lives within that stage, that territory. The territory can also be a theme. Classic common themes: the shadow territory of the spiritual, the shadow territory of the creative. Someone who's not creative, they have deep shadow territory around creativity. Someone who has intimacy barriers, for example, the book that I was holding up earlier. Intimacy, and the other word beginning with S, that can be an entire territory. The list goes on and on. These 3 signs together. Look out for your shadow entities, look out for your shadow territories, and track the shadow behaviors back to the root. They're going to really help you to thrive in 2025. But of course, you're also going to need to watch out for the 24th sign that you're not going to thrive in 2025, and that is that you don't speak about your shadow. You keep it all to yourself. In the simplest level, you need to talk to people who you trust about the things that you've discovered. We've got the dark shadow, which is all the classic negativity. We also have the golden shadow, the highest possibility. The literature backs this up. The golden shadow possibility, the highest ambitions of all of our dreams, if we were to gather them together and float them into the wind. Where would that hot air balloon go? It's floating up higher unconscious. The roots and the sludge and the heavy, gritty feelings, they're in the lower unconscious. This is also broken up rather synchronistically, as the diagram I showed you earlier, with the higher, middle, and lower. Golden shadows in the higher, lower unconscious is the darker shadow, and in the middle zone, you have the opportunity to go in both directions. I've got 20 practical exercises inside the shadow work curriculum. One of the exercises is literally mapping your shadow entities across the bands of the higher, middle, and lower unconscious. I'm bringing in psychosynthesis and Jungian psychology and transpersonal psychology overall, as well as somatic therapy inside the course, which is why I keep recommending it. It's why I'm ending this video as shadow psychology being one of the things that you really need to watch out for in 2025 if you want to get the absolute most out of your inner work. But inner work need not be just inner. I'm going to wrap up on this point with an important emphasis. At a certain moment in healing, a certain moment in attachment healing in particular, you were wounded by your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your best friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it might be. There has to be a moment where you speak your shadow in a safe space and it is received and accepted. It need not mean that you're acting out on shadow behaviors. You don't need to necessarily have full acceptance from your best friend that you've just gone and done something dreadful. Let's imagine that you've gone on this wild weekend bender and you go to your best friend and say, hey, this happened. And they're going to say, no worries at all. There's no judgment. There's no concern. If you're not a person that normally does that, your best friend would probably be very concerned that you've gone and done something extremely out of character. But you have the confidence to bring it out. You share within a safe space. It's something I'm noticing within the Shadow Work Library community. Even today, just a few hours ago, it's very top of my mind. 18 of us in the call. Everyone spoke. We all had our cameras on. People have these moments where someone will bring up a shadow behavior. One of the students, for example, brought up a shadow behavior around reading or about posture. And then I get this moment of, I've been called out as well, so let's bring mine out. And guess what happens? You can see in the group call the nodding and the people raising their hand because they have it as well. We're in this particular corner of YouTube at the very least. If you look down in the comments section, there's pretty aware people on this channel. It's time to talk about your shadows with people that matter to you, the people that feel safe to you, and ultimately taking out some of the charge that this is only a you issue, because it's just not. I'll move on to the final point of the video, hopefully make this something that's, well, I suppose we're going to go over an hour at this point, so I can't avoid it. The 25th sign that you're not going to thrive in 2025. I cannot believe that I made it through at this one take. But 25th sign, you don't track your shadow integration, and that means that you are tardy or lazy on your journaling and your actual systematic professional shadow process. It goes back to a few of the previous points I was talking about in regards to education. Don't be pleasant. Don't just be polite. Don't skirt around the edges. No preciousness here. Be professional in your shadow integration. What I want you to do practically, and this is again, one of the final points, please just pay attention to this final point. You've made it all the way through the video. Use your journal. Put the information in order. If you have tracked your shadow behaviors, you know that you have this thing related to your phone, this thing related to your romantic relationships, this other thing. Why is it still happening? Why am I still suffering with this? Where you have a particular complex around your mother. You can't stop doing this thing when you're at the gym. You don't go, whatever it might be. Track them all. Track them all. You got to track them all. We're not talking Pokemon here, but you got to track them all. Put them somewhere where you can see them. Put them on paper. Better yet, track it back to the entities. Track it back to the territories. If you just paused this video or finished this video and did this one exercise, you would be months ahead in terms of your shadow integration. We think about it in disorganized ways. That's probably a shadow behavior. I'll go with that one. That's good. That's a good start. If you want to really thrive this year, be systematic and professional. It's what we do inside the Shadow Work Library. You can tell that I'm promoting my own community space because I spent 4 years researching to put that curriculum together, and the community is alive and buzzing, intense, intelligent, creative, caring and curious individuals. New people joining every week. It's still a really small community. All the information down in the description. I'm ending the video on shadow work because it's alive for me right now, and it's alive for the people I'm most connected with in my life right now. These students inside my community, they are doing genuine shadow work. We start the calls by talking about which books we're reading and inspiring more reading, and very much the entire list here is pretty much my intention for bringing out the best of the people who choose to pay attention to me and choose fundamentally to pay more attention to themselves. Just consider joining me. You can make the most this year. Not necessarily alone, but with other people as well. It's your choice. Let's wrap up the video with a bonus hidden round that no one will see in the timestamps, but I'm going to give it to you because you actually made it to the end. The final list. These are all the signs that you won't thrive in 2025 in 5 categories in relationships, health, self-education, spirituality, and shadow psychology. You ready? Rapid fire 2 minutes. All 25 signs. Keep track of which ones you are suffering from. First sign you won't thrive in 2025, you keep a communication backlog. The second sign, you refer to your partner as your better half. The third sign, you defer relationship authority to your parents or your friends. The fourth sign, you're hooked on this. It's no good for your relationship. The fifth sign, you're blind to the inner children within you and within them. That's the relationship category. In the health category, the 6th sign that you won't thrive in 2025, you burn incense and not essential oils. The 7th sign, you don't go outside unless the sun is shining. The 8th sign, you wear normal, overly padded shoes and don't let those feet spread and breathe. The 9th sign, you don't know when to take a nap. Just let it relax. Just take a nap. Half an hour goes a long way. The 10th sign that you won't thrive in 2025, you eat things that you didn't choose consciously. You're an opportunistic eater in the workplace or in the home environment. That's the end of that stack. Moving into the self-education stack, summarizing quickly, just pay attention. You don't highlight books. The 11th sign you won't thrive in 2025, a mortal sin, some might say. The 12th sign that you won't thrive, you read with your phone nearby. The 13th sign, you only sit. You don't stand when you read. You haven't fully brought your body into the conversation. The 14th sign, you're precious, but not professional with your reading. Time to get a bit more structure, a bit more professionality. It will really pay off. The 15th sign, you read only one book at a time. Get multiple books on the go. You will thank yourself later. Moving into the 4th category of spirituality. 16th sign, you won't thrive in 2025. You're all prayer and no action. The 17th, you don't acknowledge death, which means mortality overall, but also saying grace, appreciating the life that you consume and that sustains you. It matters. It really matters. 18th sign, you're an atheist. Move yourself towards agnosticism. Don't need to believe in any organized religion. Just find that soul spark within and nurture that flame. It will illuminate places that you never could have seen, and it will give you a sense of warmth that you won't feel without it. A 19th sign, nonetheless, is that you're obsessed with science and synchronicities. Maybe watching videos like this, maybe clicking off this to go watch another spiritual video. Just watch out for it. And the 20th sign is that you're spiritually illiterate. You're not reading the spiritual texts from various religions. You're not being comparative. Final stack now, shadow work. We just went over it, so I'm going to do it really quick. 21st sign, you don't look for your shadow behaviors. 22nd sign, you don't look for shadow entities. The 23rd sign, you don't search for your shadow territories. The 24th, you're not speaking about your shadow with other people. You're keeping it all to yourself. And the final sign, the 25th sign that you will not thrive in 2025 is that you're not systematically, professionally doing your shadow work in a way where you're tracking with journaling and exercises. I won't promote my community space one more time. You already know where it is. But I will join you down in the comments section. And I thank you for being here with me at this wonderful 1 hour, 1 take, 25 signs to kick off 2025. We have made it through, and I'm going to go and douse myself in coconut water. But I'll see you in the comment section. And if you want to, check the link in the description. selfintegrationschool.com. 5 years of work in the making. I'm trying to make something rather special over there. I'd love for you to be a part of it.